Greetings, outcasts, freethinkers, narrative questioners, dot connectors, and genuinely open-minded and outright curious inhabitants of whatever realm we exist in at the moment. You are about to embark on another free first-hour episode of The Melt. If you find yourself wanting to dig deeper and have the desire to join the conversation during our monthly Melt meetups, you might want to consider becoming a monthly subscriber. For as little as 3 lousy Babylon hokey-pokey tokens per month, you can have access to full-length, early, and exclusive episodes. Just visit patreon.com/themeltpodcast or click the link in the episode notes to set the process in motion. It's simple, painless, and very well might make you feel tingly inside. So without further ado, please enjoy the show!
This is Hunter Muse.
And this is Chris Snipes, and you are listening
to The Melt.
We are led to believe that the CIA's MK-Ultra program closed up shop sometime in the 70s, but it never went anywhere, and instead both became mainstream and went further underground. It went mainstream in the sense that MK-Ultra tactics are now being widely administered to the masses via sophisticated divide and control tactics that have citizens voluntarily opting to be snitches, embodying the police state, pledging their compliance to the oligarchy, and acting as viral fear agents and disseminators of propaganda. It has gone underground by morphing into much darker programs that involve electronic leashing, biosurveillance, cloning centers, and non-consensual violent and sexual situations. One of today's guests, Ron Allen, hails from a military family whom he suspects inadvertently set him on the path of ongoing experimentation that involves nightly astral abductions that have his handlers capturing his astral body and then transplanting it to a clone that is then forced to engage in violent and sexual acts for the entertainment of high-paying customers who watch from around the world. He just released his first book, 21st Century MK-Ultra Slave, A Vintage Transhuman Tale, and he and his editor and friend, Elana Freeland, join us today to talk about it. I start off the conversation by asking Ron how the two of them crossed paths.
How did that happen, Ron? I never remember.
Yeah, it's been a while. So let's see. When I was in Costa Rica, I met somebody down there, and I spent some time talking with him and told him somewhat the story that is in my book. And when I got back to the United States, this gentleman emailed me and said that he knew somebody that might be able to help me. And it turned out to be Denny Hunt. And Denny Hunt has a video YouTube thing that he does called Why Is This True? And he did a video on me back, I don't know, I guess it's been about 5 years now. And soon after that, he told me that he was doing one with Elana, and then I contacted her, and that's how we met.
Gotcha. Fantastic.
Okay, I'm back. Our friends just wanted to say hello.
that they're watching and listening.
Yeah.
Well, Ron, let's get to the beginning of your story. What were some things? I mean, first of all, were you aware, even before you suspected that you were somehow had gotten roped into the MK Ultra program, were you aware of anything like that, any kind of program like that?
No, not really. It wasn't until my brother died in 1974 that things started to happen that were not normal.
Sure.
To what I knew as being normal at that point. And after that, the floodgates opened up.
How did that unfold?
Well, he died of suicide, and that is a odd area for people to be in, because you don't really leave this earth, this plane proper. You don't ascend or go to another place. You kind of hang out for a while, if not quite a while. But I started having night tremors, when I would lay down, I would not be able to move, and I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't say anything, but I was awake.
Yeah.
And paralysis, they call it night paralysis or
sleep paralysis.
Like sleep paralysis, right? And then I saw a reptilian in a mirror, and this is the middle 70s. Okay, there was I was living in San Francisco, and there was a lot of drug taking back in those days, and it was involved in that. But I'd been down that road many times with psychedelics, and I never had an experience like that before.
Yeah.
Where it wasn't, I looked at to where I would have been in the mirror, and I wasn't there. There was a reptilian standing there. And I don't know about you, but it wasn't until the 2000s that I started seeing depictions of reptilians.
Yeah, exactly.
Way back in 1974, I never heard, saw, knew nothing about that.
Exactly.
I think maybe Land of the Lost was my first view of a reptilian, the television show, the kids' TV show with the Sleestaks.
Yeah, the Sleestaks. Yeah, they were kind of humanoid reptilian-looking things. I would imagine.
Is that right?
Yeah, I would imagine.
What year was that?
That was
70s.
Yeah,
like probably mid 70s.
Oh, 70, was it really?
Yeah.
Oh,
wow.
70, probably 75, 76.
Yeah, I'll track it down and send you guys a clip. It was a kid's show like these. I can even think of the theme song in my mind. It's going through my mind. But these kids were on a rafting expedition. They took a wrong turn, went down this waterfall, and they were sent back in time. And there was a bunch of obviously dinosaurs, and Chaka was what would you call? Anyway, this is not. It has nothing to do with what we're here for. I don't mean to get sidetracked by 70s pop culture references. Yeah, sorry about that.
But it sounds like kids programming.
Exactly,
for sure. Sounds
it
like
was
programming
for sure. And it terrified me when I was little.
Yes,
these reptilian creatures.
Yeah, it was nuts. So. Yeah, that must have been pretty terrifying. Was this thing, I mean, was it kind of mocking your movements? Was it you? Or
Not at all.
Okay.
Me. And I wasn't afraid. I I rocked back on my heels because I had no idea what I was looking at.
Sure.
It was my size, but it had a big long snout. And at first, when I rocked back on my heels, it just stood there staring. And then it realized that I could see it. It flinched and then turned into me.
Wow. And then
I went in, gathered my composure, went into the other room where my friend was, and I told her about it, and she said, "Oh no, that's evil," and I just forgot about it for the next 40 years until I was down in Costa Rica, and I saw an image that somebody had drawn of that on the internet or someplace.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that that existed or it was in folklore or whatever. I just had no idea.
Wow.
And Ron, tell them about how in Costa Rica, or was it in Costa Rica, where it's kind of accepted by people that there are these entities.
Yeah. At one point, and it was Costa Rica, at one point, I heard somebody say he uses his Draco to do bad things. It's common knowledge in a group of guys standing around talking. It's not forbidden talking. It's not proper. You don't bring it up at a cocktail party or anything like that. But and they use terms like Yeti and well, anyway, they do talk about it and they know about it.
Interesting.
And up here, that is not the case at all. It certainly wasn't in my upbringing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we live in such a materialist, reductionist society that something like that is relegated for bad TV or something. We don't give things like that credence here because we're too. It's not something you can reproduce in a laboratory, or it doesn't make you a more productive citizen to think about things like that.
Yeah, and there's more programming here.
Yes, exactly. We're much more media, steeped in media.
Media images. Yeah, yes. And children would chase you, wouldn't they, Ron? And
taunt
you about being a Draco.
In Costa Rica?
Very strange.
Anunnaki.
Or an
Anunnaki is what he said, yeah.
Yeah, Anunnaki. Wow. I mean, these are like conspiracy theories here, but exactly. Down there it's sort of some sort of genre.
So they could actually, obviously they must have been able to perceive you on that level if they were, taunting you and saying all that stuff.
Yeah. And I think that has something to do with the psychic aspect, which I do believe is a CIA tool that, I don't know if it's something that gets attached to you or they follow you and they're always there, but other people hearing my thoughts and my hearing their thoughts and higher selves and all this other stuff that is not usually part of the human equation.
Yeah.
But it has been for me, and I attribute that to CIA and MK Ultra involvement.
And how do you think that you became involved in this? You mentioned that your father had something to do with the military, right?
Navy.
Yeah. Navy, U.S. Navy, and high up in, he was an innovator of onboard radar for airplanes. Radar started in just before the war in England, and it was not on board. And then shortly thereafter, my father during the war was with blimps, and that's anti-submarine warfare.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a very smart individual and became a scientist in this field. And Mr. Lockheed called him Mr. Radar, and the Navy just moved him right up, and he went through all the blimps and the modified B-17, modified Super Constellation, the Connie, with the disc up on top, and they were using radomes above, below, and putting them all over the place trying to figure it out. Now they've got the evolution after the E2A, which he wrote the book on. But anyway, this was, 44 is when he went in, and up until mid 70s, he was working in that field. And, it's my understanding that people that want to get advanced in the military and the Navy and science fields like this are approached about their children. Now, whether that actually happened or offhandedly, it just got put into play. But at my birth, my mother had decided that she did not want another boy. I was the fourth son, and left me at the hospital. Wouldn't even look at me for my first 10 days. And that was my entry.
Wow. That's wild. I wonder if your father knew my grandfather, because he was in the Navy at that time. He was an electrical engineer. And I just wonder if they ever crossed paths. It's so fascinating. I'm sorry?
What was his name?
Philip Warren Powell.
Yeah, I didn't.
Was your family in San Diego at that point, Ron?
No, I mean, they were there in the 1950, 51, but then went back to the East Coast, and that's where I was born. And, 47, my brother Gordon, that's talked about in the book, was born in Providence, Rhode Island. And, my family did a lot of back and forth while in the Navy. My first 10 years were on the East Coast.
That's
Mm-hmm.
where
states back there.
That's where he was stationed, in Brunswick, Georgia, Alabama, Puerto Rico for a time. That's really, really interesting. One thing I wanted to bring up, Ron, is that it's entirely possible, because children have just this innate psychic ability. It's very possible that the children who were taunting you or had some weird energy toward you, that psychically they were perceiving something that, maybe the average adult might not see or perceive.
Yeah, Ron, was the snake in you at that point?
Yeah. Well, that was just before the snake.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, just before, when you were down in Costa Rica?
Yeah. I actually lived on the beach. I went there as a surfer, and until my arthritis kicked in, and I was the V2K, which is voice to skull transmission.
Mm-hmm.
I was being harassed by, whether it's targeted individual people or what, I'm not quite sure, but I was being harassed for being on vacation instead of, I don't know, being, subjugated or fulfilling some higher expectation or something. But my arthritis set in and this is about 2010, and the psychic aspect and the TI aspect was just swirling, just was getting out of hand. And I went to about 40 miles away, 30 miles, there's a valley that I ended up in, and it was there that the snake became an issue with me. And it's in the book. I'm a lot better at writing things out than off the top of my head.
Yes.
Well, but go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I definitely want to get into the snake, but I want to try and kind of start at the beginning of the origins of all this and work our way to that point, semi-chronologically. But do you think that something occurred in that 10 days that you were at the hospital by yourself that affected you?
Oh, yeah. In 2005, in Costa Rica, I was taking a room at a small hotel at the beach, and I had this dream. It was more of a memory dream. It was quite vivid, and there was a doctor at a 1950s panel, like a laboratory panel, and he turned and he looked at me and he said, "Oh no, he's woken up." And I sensed, I could tell I was a infant from how he was looking at me. It was just something that I knew. And after that, because of my parents dying in suspicious circumstances in 1990, and my uncle telling me right after that about what had transpired at my birth, I started looking for a nurse that might have been taking care of me in those first 10 days, because I knew that a baby would, not be able to survive on its own. And,
sure.
And so I wanted to find somebody, because my mother was a nurse's assistant. They used to call them gray ladies from the Red Cross. But I was not able to find any nurses other than administrative sorts. But I did find a doctor. And when I looked up this one particular doctor, I found him on the internet. That was like in 2011 or 2013, I think. I found the same guy that was in my dream, only older. That's 50 years or whatever. And it was him. It was the guy that was in my dream that said, "Oh no, he's woken up."
Interesting. And your older brother Gordon that committed suicide, he was a part of this too, right?
Yeah. Very troubled individual. And when I was still in the hospital, my mother told me that he would come running home from school, "Where's the baby? Where's Ronnie?" And my first memories are, of him and her, and through growing up, my mother would always take me along, and whether it was a convalescent home that he had to be checked into because of suicidal tendencies, or however it was manifesting, or in jail, I would go with her to get him out of jail. And he was so troubled that in '74 he had asked me to move up to San Francisco and live with him and his girlfriend, and I did. And he was during dinner, he'd cry through dinner, and he was very distraught through his 20s. He was 26 when he died, but through his 20s, after he was drafted into the Army and all that period in between, he was bouncing around from job to job and going through real depression, and it was real difficult to go through with him. I wanted to be there. I wanted to see that joyful, laughing brother that I knew as a child, and growing into adulthood, seeing somebody that was so depressed. And it was the MK Ultra that he had been indoctrinated to. He came running through the house one day, and I believe I was about 13, and so he would have been 19, and he was chasing my mother, and they had been arguing down at the other end of the house. And when they came by me, they went into her bedroom. She went into her bathroom, locked the door, and he stood outside yelling, and he said, "How could you let them do that to me?" He said, "I know I'm one, and I know Ron is too."
Interesting. So, I wonder how he knew that.
I'd love to ask him.
Yeah.
But I suspect that he was experiencing, in 71, maybe, I was out at his place. He had moved out to some remote cabin in the middle of nowhere in San Diego, and I was out there, and a black helicopter came over. My brother wasn't there, but I was there with a friend. The black helicopter coming, I told my friend, "Let's get under a rock and hide," and that's what we did. The thing sat right above the rock for like 20 minutes, and I know that was part of the MK Ultra, CIA, whatever, and it had come out to his place because he was on the hit list and found me instead. And then my next day, I ran into the same helicopter, only different circumstances. So he was being, chased and dealt with, manipulated in much the same way, lower tech because of the years, but he was.
What type of hospital were you born in? Was it a military hospital, or was it like a public hospital? It was military.
No, it was military. It was an Army hospital.
On the East Coast?
Yeah, the Valley Forge Army Hospital.
Wow.
It was known for phantom itch. Do you know what that is? Phantom itch is when somebody's had their arm blown off in a war, and their elbow itches.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it was a psychological or psychiatric type of hospital. The doctor that I'm referring to was in psychiatrics.
Well, Ron, do you get the impression that this MK Ultra programming or experimentation was something that your parents set in motion, or something that was set in motion opportunistically from you being left at the hospital for 10 days?
Well, as I stated before, it's come to my attention that with scientists, and I've heard this from other people, they are either their children are tracked, or they are told that they will take their children to this appointment at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Ron, can I respond?
Sure, please.
I'm very familiar with this. I've talked to many MK Ultras, and it is typical in the Cold War that they will approach officers and scientific doctors, researchers, and set it up that for the sake of the country, for the sake of the nation, that they must basically give one of their children or more to research in order for the U.S. to have a victory in the Cold War. So this is so typical. And I don't know of many who turned it down. Now, there are some cases where parents, like at Walter Reed in Washington, D.C., I know of several people whose parents thought that their child was in a special program for getting smarter and you know, having more of a future, who dropped their children off, and then the children went into MK Ultra. So so sometimes it was deceit, but a lot of times it was agreement because of the need for sacrifice for the Cold War.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I've also heard that, Elana, that it was almost sold as like your duty to your country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of people bought it. I mean, it was a very different mindset then. People don't realize that. It wasn't like now. I don't know what they do now. The other place that they got children from were satanic ritual abuse cults. The CIA had a lot of contacts in the crime world, and they were able to take some of those children as well, because they were already programmed, and they were accustomed to pain and discipline, as they called it. So, you know, that was all, to me. This is not Ron. This is me. That was all from this deep relationship with paperclip Nazis, who had already done tons of research in the camps on mind control, and arrived in the United States with lots and lots of research that had already been done, and then were given the keys to the kingdom to continue the research. And with the CIA being basically what are called the finders, they were the ones who would go and find the children and bring them in for guinea pig.
Well, I would opine they also are using child protective services, orphanages. There's lots of places for kids to slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
So, Ron, you said in the book that it was at 18 that you tried to separate yourself from it. How did you go about that, and what drove you to that point? I mean, obviously, all of this was very unpleasant, but what brought you to saying, I'm just going to get the hell out of this?
18. 18 is when the helicopter incident happened, where it sat above me, and the next day I had taken some LSD, which for my brother that I'm speaking of and myself, it was pretty common activity. I mean, it was that epoch in the United States, but you know, we were heavy dosers, and I took a hit of acid. A friend of mine drove 100 miles to go to a rock concert. When we got there, by the time we had gotten there, we had been a helicopter had been above us, and I was feeling I was unable to speak with my friend. I was, it was a very heavy dose that I took, and I was feeling like I was being controlled, manipulated, and had no, ability to no free will. And on the way back, because I said, no, I can't go to the concert. No, let's go back. even though we made it all the way there. On the way back, it started becoming so heavy of a load for me to carry that I decided that I would not want to live like that. And so I jumped out of the car going 65 miles an hour and tried to end it. The feeling of being, under somebody's control was such that I just didn't want to live like that.
Yeah.
So how did psychedelics play a role in this? Did they come before your MK Ultra experience that you were aware of, or did they come after? Like, do you think you were dosed as an infant?
Well, I think, that's a good question, isn't it? I haven't a way of answering that question. I have asked myself. But on the occasion that I just spoke of, yes, I believe it's entirely possible that it came through those channels.
Mm-hmm.
It was not uncommon in my high school. It was not uncommon in the town that I lived in or the times in Southern California.
Mm.
But also, go ahead, Ron.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, well, I was just going to say, I went to a concert like in 73 or I guess 70, maybe 1970, where Timothy Leary flew. This was in the Laguna Hills, in the hills below Laguna Beach. And Timothy Leary flew above that with throwing out sheets of blotter acid at the concert.
That's right.
And he totally had, those connections.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. He was completely CIA. What I wanted to add was that I just was on that webinar at MK Ultra, and the woman Anne Diamond, who wrote a little book called My Cold War, she's MK Ultra, and she reminded me that when she was one of the people that was abused with LSD and what's called psychic driving by the psychiatrist Dr. Ewan Cameron in Montreal at McGill University Hospital. And the CIA was they thought the LSD was going to be, the drug by which they could control people. Instead, what they found was that LSD just did not lend itself to control. You never knew which direction it was going to go in.
Exactly. But
they did LSD on constant experiments for at least 20 to 30 years. In that period, Ron's talking about early 70s, and it looked like it was just, the CIA pouring this the LSD 25 and whatever out into the streets to control or do research on the 60s generation. But it was also MK Ultra. That would be the first thing that they would try with people who were in the MK Ultra program, was to really find out how far you could go with the LSD. The people who were under psychic driving at McGill were dosed with LSD, heavy doses. We're talking more than 250 milligrams. And then they would have a microphone under their pillow, spitting out some sentence that they wanted the person to be completely controlled by. That went on for several years. And she reminded me that there is now a class action lawsuit still underway in Quebec Province regarding this. That's 400 people are suing the CIA and the government of Montreal for what happened to them, because a lot of these people just never came back.
Yeah, I'm sure. Ron, did you indulge in psychedelics for mind expansion or for more escapism, just to momentarily get out of your situation?
Mind expansion mostly. But yeah, to get out of, I was always, alcohol played a big part in my 20s and 30s as well. And it wasn't just drinking socially, it was drinking hard to the point of browning out, not remembering what happened. And I attribute that to wanting to just get out of this life that I was in. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was something that didn't set well with me. Everybody else seemed to be, having children, love affairs, and I was just stumbling in that area. I was able to hold a job, but I wasn't able to relate on a personal level with people. And other than, good time, through that escapism. Yeah.
And you say things really went into high gear after your parents died, right?
Yeah, well, and there's a few of those turning points that have happened in my life. That was one of them. The electronic leash was set, and at that point, I was pretty popular in San Diego. I was a street theater performer, and working with groups, putting on events and large events, and I had a large circle of friends and all this other stuff, and it kind of took the wind out of my sail when my parents passed away. I'm older than they were now when they died, and they were quite popular in amongst all their relations, and it was a large impact in the family. And after everybody left, after everything was shut down, I was sitting around the living room with some friends, my brothers, and I felt this electronic, what I call leash, being set. And it was, I asked anybody or the other people in the room if anybody felt that, and nobody did. It was just me. But there was something that, clamped on to me at that point. And I'm sure it was one of the people that was at my parents' funeral. It's the wake was held at the house, and all my father's co-workers, past friends, and everybody was there. And so that's when that what entered me into the 21st century back in 1990 was that electronic leash.
And to remember that Ron's dad was working for the military defense industry.
Yeah.
And that's who Ron worked for, was the military defense industry, Lockheed, et cetera. So that connection, you have to think CIA when you see those connections. I don't know of anything, especially the top 10, of which Lockheed is number one in the world as a defense contractor. Those top 10 are all into mind control, and they're all CIA. That I've learned over years of research. So yeah, Ron had that leash, and just to amplify on his description of the electronic leash. That's what's going on regarding the shedding of people who are inoculated, is they are now on a Bluetooth leash.
Wow.
And so that's what a leash is. It knows where you are. It knows your biometrics. And am I saying that they had that back in 1990? Yeah, I think so. I think they had it, maybe not as sophisticated as now, but they had it.
So my question is, what is the intention here? Are they using people? Are there different layers to the MK Ultra program where they have high functioning people that are high level, maybe Manchurian candidate, people capable of committing assassinations, and then there are people that they enslave and then just observe?
Well, I want to respond to that for one thing, to just correct your picture a little bit. Yeah, okay, MK Ultra Manchurian candidates. What about governors? What about senators?
Exactly.
I mean, it's rife now. In fact, if I ever hear of like I've watched DeSantis closely, the Florida governor, and saying to myself, oh, gee, is he MK Ultra? I mean, I can say that other states are.
Sure.
Yeah, I've watched these guys, and there's a certain thing about the eyes and they're just it is what it is. But yes, there are echelons, and with Ron, that's something he and I talked about when we were working on the book. And I kept saying it to him, this working for Lockheed, and I hear what you were doing for them, but I just have this feeling there was something else going on. But Ron, last I checked with you, Ron, he doesn't really remember, other than what we wrote in the book, that he worked in this department and he had these functions that he did, and da 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 da. But there were clues all the way through, that, such as what's the word I want? The backlash of his fellow employees toward him. Just certain things, and he'd have to go on a trip, and then he'd come back. There's just a lot of detail missing there.
Right.
And knowing that his dad worked for a defense contractor, and knowing that Ron worked, I mean, Lockheed Martin is like Satan or something. I mean, it's the worst in mind control and every other thing. So I'm still not satisfied that we plumbed the depths of that. But, Ron has remembered a lot over the years just by paying attention. And I think all MK Ultras have to go through that.
What was your role, Ron, with Lockheed?
Well, I worked at a rocket engine manufacturer, and most of the satellites were being put up from the 70s to the 90s, were using the engines of the company that I worked for, and Lockheed was our biggest customer. I did all the Mars missions, the deep space, the exploratory missions, as well as the bread and butter communications, as well as some of the military that would arrive in the middle of the night in an unmarked van and pick up whatever and take it away. And Lockheed Martin, I was working with this company when Columbine happened. And if you remember, that was a pretty traumatic, we had shooters at schools before that, but Columbine kind of put that whole activity on the map. And that was done in a town where all the people that I worked for at Lockheed lived in that town.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the people that I worked with committed suicide because their children were in that deaths in the killing and the so on. And it had a huge impact. And that's mind control.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah. And, you know, the weapons they use, so on and so forth. It just, you know, this whole thing when you walk down the street today and you see half the people are wearing masks and everybody is programmed from Fauci or the news or whatever to be in a state of fear. And that's an outbranch of MK Ultra. You know, they started with a bunch of mice, and then they move up to, you know, a bunch of people that don't have close associations, and then they go into hospitals and prisons and try it out there, and then pretty soon they're trying it out on towns, and now it's the whole world that they're.
I think we lost him.
Yeah, well, maybe he'll be back. I wanted to say, did you notice when he's describing the job, how much like the secret space program that sounds?
Absolutely.
It was all, and that had started up, that started up with Werner von Braun, the secret space program. So it was well underway, but Ron has no memories of that, of what he really did, but I can feel it. I can feel there was something else.
Yeah.
But you know, there's no use prodding, and you know, it either comes or it doesn't.
Sure.
It's interesting.
He had so many drugs that memory gets to be a real challenge.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, the Columbine connection, because those kids' parents had some pretty shady connections, and the sons were both deeply obsessed with violent video games. And I think that has been a introduction into the MK Ultra mind control.
And they were on Prozac.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and their father, one of those boys, his father worked for the military contractors. So, you know, I always look, the devil's in the details.
Yep.
And you'll always find details. But nobody knows how to read them because nobody can really think anymore because the mind control is so deep. So he's not back yet?
No. Nope. I'm waiting for an email. Maybe I will email him and see what's happening on his end.
Maybe I should plug my phone in.
Well, I think part of it, Elana, is there's so many dots to connect. That when you live in a slave society and you're working 10 to 12 hours a day and making meals and traveling to go to work an hour each way, there's no time for revelry. There's no time for critical thinking. And that's really the intention of the slave society.
That's right.
Is to keep people busy with this very debt and just low frequency thinking so that they don't have a chance to really drill into this stuff.
And that's why you have people like me who spend years on this stuff and then can publish it, but the publishing will only be peripheral.
Yeah.
Will never be allowed that it would be central.
Yes.
No, I get how it works, but to me, it doesn't matter. To me, it's like, just nail that truth, you know? 'Cause
exactly.
I know that if you nail the truth, it will out at some point. That's just the way it is. So, you know, but for Ron, it's been a real struggle because he's still accessed. He's not sitting, you know, having the leisure time like I do to really dig deep into things. He's being accessed every night.
Yeah.
Every night.
Well,
And I hope you get to that.
The interesting thing is the fragmentation of the brain. And I think that that's where the drinking comes in and the drug use comes in. It's your brain is trying to reconcile this bifurcation and it's trying to survive. And sometimes the way to do that is to disassociate with drugs and alcohol. Because
yeah, but I wouldn't look at it that way. You're acting like he has a choice.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And MK Ultra has no choice. They programmed him to drink and drug. Absolutely. No question in my mind. If they didn't want him drinking and drugging, you think he'd be doing it? No way. No way. They'd make his life hell if he did it.
Interesting.
So no, it's all part of the programming, but when you wake up to the programming, then you have the job of all that weakening of your will. How do you get it back? It's really hard, really hard.
Yeah. I admire the fact that he hasn't given up, because it sounds like utter hell. It
is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first read his manuscript, that's what I thought was, my God, this is the first male MK Ultra whom I've ever heard of, who's written something. I was just thrilled, and I knew immediately it had to be published.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so glad that it was. It's such a pertinent story, and what you were saying earlier about there being different levels of MK Ultra, Ron seems to definitely fall in the active experiment level. Like it seems like they're just poking and prodding and seeing what happens and watching the results.
Well, yeah, and I think that Gordon, his brother, was the real one they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Gordon checked out, then they sort of took Ron and let him go. They put a leash on him, but then, as you'll find out,
mm-hmm.
he then was able to go to, down to South and Central America and sort of lose himself for a while.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they just kept track of him. No, it seems like, that's just my theory. I mean, I've been through about a dozen of these folks in figuring out. They've got memories, but they haven't figured it out. And once you see that the CIA always follows certain patterns, then, you're not lost with a lot of detail, because they will follow a pattern for different people. And that's kind of what, and I knowing what they do with Ron now, that's something that they prepped him for, I'm sure. And, I assume he's expendable, but they keep him around because he's making a lot of money for somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Elana, how does it work? I want to kind of take out the Hollywood view of this and see this just like the machinations of the daily experience. Do you see this as there's a scientist in a room that is actually, pulling the levers, or is this something that's more an algorithm that's more computer based? Like how do you perceive that they are actually controlling him?
Generally speaking, they want to move everything to an algorithm. Generally speaking, they want an AI on all of it. They no doubt will interfere now and then when they have a new idea or things are not going in the direction they wanted, and maybe the algorithm is insufficient, so now it needs to be changed or whatever. But generally speaking, I see Ron as primarily on an algorithm. And he definitely has a handler, and he definitely has a relationship with FBI, CIA, NSA, maybe DIA, but definitely the Navy. And truthfully, I find the Navy the most culpable of all the branches of the military, but they all scratch each other's backs too.
Yeah, sure.
But the Navy, I don't know if you know this, but they are generally considered the elite branch because the oldest families, because of when we were on the high seas, right? It's the oldest branch. And it's from very elite families generally. But they tend to be the most ruthless. My father was a scientist in Navy intelligence, so I know what it did to him. And with Ron, I mean, one thing someone said to me was, an MK Ultra said, "I just don't understand why he doesn't resist." And I said, "Well, yeah, but if he resists, where's he gonna go?
Yeah.
I mean, what's he gonna do?"
Sure.
Right.
Because they know that, when he comes to visit me and we're talking about the book, I know that I'm in a three-way conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
At least
They're
3
listening,
ways.
and
Yeah.
it just goes with the territory, and it doesn't scare me because I'm doing something that if they didn't want me to do it, then I'm sure they would let me know
Sure.
in one way or another. But they know everything. I mean, it's really awful. It really irritates me over and over because, well, there's no free will. And
Ron?
that's what they want for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's what we signed off on with the Patriot Act.
Exactly.
Ron?
Yeah, Americans have really slept through too much, and it's too late now for going back.
Are you there, Ron?
Ron?
Hello.
Hi.
There you are.
There you are.
Welcome back.
I made it. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's
it's
okay.
Holy cow.
What happened?
Oh, I'm on a flip phone, and I was a bad boy and did a lot of talking this month and spent all my money, and so I just had to re-up. Anyway, did you miss me?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
I'm
filled
sorry.
I filled in a few gaps.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, okay, the electronic leash was set, and things continue to get more intense and more complicated. Things having to do with consciousness transfer and cloning, and I don't know if all of that stuff starts to come into play before the snake enters you, or whether the snake happens first.
Well, so Rudolf Steiner speaks of people who have passed, those that have recently died, still being able to come into our sphere as being accessed through mediums. And that's what I was talking about my brother Gordon when he passed, the suicide, the abrupt death. He didn't immediately go ascend or whatever. He was here, unseen, but here. And a lot of what I was experiencing at the time of the snake was had a component of people who had passed. And again, it's part of this psychic thing that comes through via the CIA. The phone will stop ringing in a second. And it's connected to what I experienced and do. still do. I know that component is there. The snake, the reptilian aspect, and this psychic are all interwoven in my experience. I haven't seen any of the reptilian aspect. I feel the snake occasionally, and I hear this chatter among people who have passed. I saw not more than it was less than 5 years ago. I saw a cat jump off of a chair in the corner of my eye, but I knew the cat. I knew the color. I knew that I was sitting where it used to sit. And it had passed years before. So I have that, and I believe that, these people that are playing God, this CIA cult, has the technological ability to connect, same as back 100 years ago, Rudolf Steiner talking about people would get murdered so that they could access the afterlife through those people, and vice versa, that they could be come in and create mayhem here, and it's through us that they do that. This is an interplay that is happening, and that's part of my experience.
God bless you, Ron. Seriously, I am so grateful for your time and your energy and your efforts. And I have no belief that I'm ever going to be able to wake anybody up other than myself. And what these conversations do is like taking a ice bath. It really does wake me up. And I just thank you so much for that. I thank you for your time, Elana. It has been wonderful.
Yes. I'm getting to that.
Okay.
And we are definitely in your corner, Ron, for sure. If you ever find yourself driving through Kansas, you always have a place to stay here. So I'll save our
terrific. Thank you.
I'll save our lead room for you.
Exactly. You can stay in our Faraday cage.
All right.
And I would like to remind everybody about Ron's book, 21st Century MK Ultra Slave. It's incredible, a fantastic read.
And I want to remind people that last I checked, the CIA does not pay all of its guinea pigs anything for anything ever. And please support Ron.
Yes, absolutely.
This money counts a lot for him.
Where would be the best place to get that book? Where would you have us go,
Ron?
Ron?
Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon.
Okay. So pay the devil and you get some of that too. Hopefully.
I know.
Yeah.
You need to sell it directly off your website. You don't have a website, Ron, but Elana, you could sell it off of
One
yours.
day.
One day, yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I will have all of the pertinent links in the episode notes where you guys can go and you can find the book and you can find Elana's work. And you do have no web presence to speak of, do you, except for this book, Ron?
Correct.
Okay, good. Stay off of it.
It's called a web for a reason.
You're not missing anything.
Yeah.
But we will use it to promote your story.
I have been on the computer since 1980.
Yes.
I had my first email address in 1991.
Wow.
And I'm still going strong with it.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
I've created a lot of websites, and mine will be coming.
Cool.
Good.
Fantastic. Well, let us know, and we'll certainly promote it for sure.
Thank
Ron,
you.
thank you so much for your bravery and coming out with this. I'm sure it can inevitably help a lot of people who are maybe thinking that they're crazy or that they're alone and experiencing things like this. And your story, I'm sure, will help bring those people to some sort of peace, knowing that there's somebody else out there going through this. So it's so important that you've done this, and congrats to you.
Exactly. And Elana, you're a force of nature. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
absolutely love you.
Thank you. And I want to invite all the male MK Ultras out there to please write your story. Please.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
We need to know what happened to you. And it's amazing to me that there aren't more, really.
Yeah, I know that they're out there.
Yeah, they're out there being quiet.
Yes. All right. Well, wonderful meeting you, Ron. Perhaps we can chat again sometime down the road.
Terrific meeting you guys.
Yes.
Thank you for your
good.
work. Yeah,
absolutely. We wouldn't
very
be here
important
for
work to get all these stories out.
we're
Sure
here
is.
as a conduit to get your fantastic
Exactly.
words out.
And we
your
want to have
stories.
you back on, Elana. We just admire you both so much, but really we want to have you back on because there's so much more to talk about.
Yeah,
we want to dip deeply into the geoengineering conversation that we kind of took a left on the last time you were on.
It was a great left.
Oh, did we?
turn.
Did we?
Yes.
Yeah. That happens.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for the
All
work you
right.
do, guys.
Blessings, everybody.
Likewise.
Yes.
And
Sleep well.
We'll
Take
talk to
care
you down
all.
the road. You
Yes.
sleep well, Ron. Get some sleep.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Goodbye, guys.
Share some sleep. Okay.
Yes. Bye, Ron.
Hi.
Man. What do you say? I mean, that's such an intense story, such an intense thing that he's still experiencing. It's not something like 20 years later, I write my, it's like he's still going through that.
Yeah. And I think where I get all freaked out is that I have really intense, vivid, waking dreams with all kinds of shit happening in them. And, talking to someone like Ron, I'm thinking, am I really dreaming, or is this something that's happening on some other dimensional level and my astral body is being used to do all this crazy shit? So that's where I get very freaked out.
Is there something about your dreams that you're not telling me? Let's just leave it there. Okay, anyway. Yeah, Ron is, I'm glad that Elana encouraged him to write this book.
Yeah.
Because it's a story that definitely needs to be told, and I've never heard one quite like that.
Yeah, I mean, Kathy O'Brien's story is so deep and entrenched and so much controversy and, public figures and, there's so much going on there that's a mind fuck. Mm-hmm. This takes that mind fuck and turns it on its ear. There was a Westworld kind of element too of these clones and people observing these elites, and I hate to use that term, these predators observing this action and watching these things go on.
Yeah, that's the thing too with a lot of MK Ultra stuff. It's usually it doesn't seem like he's sharing his space. He has no privacy. He has no, after he goes to sleep, free will. So that's an aspect that I've never quite heard in MK Ultra before. Usually it's a very solo adventure, but there's a lot of moving parts involved, and obviously from what he says, people can tune in to his suffering and watch this freak show that has him as the main star, and he has no choice in the matter.
Well, he's the main star in his story. Who knows how many versions of this are happening with how many other people, thousands, hundreds, million, who knows?
Yeah.
One thing that kind of popped into my head when he was talking was I was thinking of Marilyn Monroe, and when I guess there was some reel-to-reel videos or some films of her having sex with various people in Hollywood, and I was thinking, wow, 60, 70 years ago, that's the way a lot of this shit was happening, is that they were still using mind control and they were still using this type of behavior, but the technology wasn't necessarily there. It was actually like a physical film that was being taken and then shared among people. Now, because we have this grid that people are tuning into, now you can do that around the world, and you never have to have any hand-to-hand handing something over to someone, a videotape or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing with Ron's story too that's unique, is that he was born in, I believe, in 1954, so the technology has gone through so many changes. Like it's and he, as we said in the chat, that he seems to be the subject of an ongoing experiment. So who knows how many new technologies have rolled out since he's...
Exactly. Yeah. So he's like the MK Ultra elder statesman.
Yeah.
And maybe he's one of these devices that have been used for 60 years.
Yeah.
For all he knows, for all we know.
I totally admire his optimism, though. I just don't know how I would cope with that. That's just so intense every night.
Oh my God.
Pretty much all night.
So freaky when you started to ask him about voices, and then we heard a voice in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, that freaked me out. Like, are you safe, Ron?
And when his phone went out during part of the conversation, I was like, Ron? I emailed him, Ron, are you okay?
Oh God.
And he was okay.
In the second hour, we talked about the electronic leash. We talked about consciousness transfer and cloning.
Many of the acts that he remembers committing when he was under the effect of being disembodied in his clone.
Yep, the snake and the reptilian aspect, and how they are connected with sexual experiences.
Where the astral and physical overlap.
Yep, his brother Gordon and his brother Gordon's suicide. And then he talked about Rudolf Steiner and potentially the CIA being able to connect his brother with him in the afterlife. That was a trippy... we could do a whole show about that.
Don't even get me started, girlfriend.
Listen.
The voyeuristic aspect of this whole experiment.
The sentient world simulation.
The viewing rooms and what takes place in the viewing rooms.
Yeah, the Donald Marshall Astral Body book. He talked about that.
And the jab connection.
Yeah, there's some trippy shit going on in the world, guys.
Yeah. And it was amazing to have Elana back, too. She wrote the foreword to the book. And we will have Elana on again. And I hope we have Ron on again, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We love Elana. She's incredible. What a wonderful, amazing human being she is. And so great that she is such a bolster and a support for Ron, because he really needs that. I can tell in his life he needs like a North Star, and I think that she's really affording him that.
Absolutely. Well, there's no place that we can direct you to Ron's work except to go buy the book, which is really fantastic. It's hard to believe what you're reading, but it's his experience, it's his life. So I highly recommend it. And
I don't encourage anyone ever to buy anything from Amazon, because I do think that Jeff Bezos is a agent for the devil. But in this case, I would say supporting Ron Allen is an extremely important thing to do, and it's not like buying, 6 cases of Tide soap. Go and buy a book that can give you an opportunity to drill into someone's story that's very compelling, and certainly not something that you're going to see on the nightly news.
By no means. They will call people like Ron crazy on the nightly news if they even bring anything like that up.
Well, and what Ron has been through is crazy making. So I would not fault him at all if he was mad, because he has every right to be mad, because
Absolutely.
He's been through some mad shit.
It's not just like the experiences in and of themselves are absolutely maddening and such a total and complete mindfuck, but the fact that it robs him of any good REM sleep that he gets. I can't imagine what the level of exhaustion that he must exist under most of his life.
Well, who knows? We have no idea how that is being managed in the sequence of his experience with this algorithm. We have no idea what they're doing to him.
True.
And it's possible that's part of the experiment, is to see how many years someone can go with uninterrupted or interrupted sleep, mm-hmm. and uninterrupted chaos, basically. I was also very fascinated by the whole psychedelic aspect and element of that, and I think that was one of the things that I touched on in that first hour, mm-hmm. is, do you think that you were dosed as an infant? Because it seems very likely and possible that those things are introduced from the time someone doesn't have kind of their consciousness completely formulated into like a set reality.
And there's much more of the drug use in the book than we talked about. But I was also going to ask about generational, like, did he feel that either of his parents were subject to any sort of MK Ultra stuff? And if anyone were a candidate, I would say that it was his mother, because she, I guess, was prone to fits of rage and pounded his brother at one point. Not Gordon, but I think another one of his brothers.
Yeah. But it's possible the father too, because they go on these quote unquote secret missions or quote unquote business trips. So it's very possible that both are being used in different aspects in different ways.
True. But from what I ascertained from his father, from the book, it seemed like he was at least, able to compose himself a lot more gracefully than his mother was at times.
Right. So and maybe that's how they did it, is
Perhaps.
that the dad went off and they did whatever the fuck they did to the dad, and then he was able to take the programming.
Could be.
Trippy shit, guys.
Well, it's a conversation we will keep having. We've got more of that coming up in the next couple of months, and along with other fantastic things.
Yeah.
Thank you all so very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. If you have any thoughts, ideas, guest recommendations, casserole recipes, praises, or condemnations, you can email us at either themeltpodcast@protonmail.com.
Or you can reach me at hunter-muse@protonmail.com. And I really appreciate everyone who's here with us.
Yes.
Even if you aren't into it and you're rolling your eyes right now, that's okay. That's part of the chorus of life, is that we all have a opinion, and I believe all are welcome.
Hell, if you made it this far, that means you listened to the whole thing. So kudos to you for getting through that. I'm sure Ron appreciates you taking the time to listen to his story and how much he suffers. So if anything, just send Ron some good thoughts. Let's build a force field of positivity around him, and deflect all of that evil shit that's trying to come his way. Yeah, we can do it. The mind is a powerful thing. Let's project out to Ron and give him our love and the support that he needs. And yeah, it can't hurt, right?
And let's hope that Ron doesn't choke anyone else out.
That was super fucking dark.
I'm just trying to make you laugh. If you could only see Chris's expression right now.
I'm speechless. I'm not sure how good of taste that joke was in. Ron, she's joking.
Ron knows that I'm joking.
Okay, I hope so. Because I just wouldn't want anybody to joke about my stuff, my dark stuff that I've gone through in most of my life. And anyway, I'm sorry.
Hey, I think you have to have humor or they in quotes win.
True. Very true. Okay. Is that all? Did we cover everything? We've got fantastic stuff coming up.
Yeah.
This probably won't come out until the new year, so Happy New Year.
Happy New Year and Merry Christmas to everyone around the world. Indeed. Or whatever
Happy
it is.
Hanukkah and
whatever it is you celebrate.
Kwanzaa, whatever it may be. Flying Spaghetti Monsters, anniversary, homecoming, who knows?
Exactly. Just throw it all in a bucket.
Yes. All right. We love you.
We love you.
We'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Meow.
To hear the full-length version of this episode, get access to exclusive and early episodes, and participate in our monthly Zoom meetups for as little as $3 per month, just click the Patreon link in the episode notes or visit patreon.com/themeltpodcast. Contributing financially will help to make this podcast my full-time gig that I can devote more time to and allow me to create more content. Other ways of contributing would be giving us a favorable review or rating wherever you get your podcasts, subscribing to us on YouTube, spreading the word wherever you and your tribe congregate, or just by sending us your positive thoughts and intentions. In a quantumly intertwined and holographic multiverse, these also go a long way. Thank you.